Hello students, I am Tusharkanti Kormokar and I welcome you to this class. Today we will read William Wordsworth's poem Tintern Abbey, which is prescribed in the fourth paper of your syllabus, which is entitled as British Romantic Literature. Since this is a long poem, we will divide our discussion of the poem into several parts. In the first part, we will talk about Wordsworth's poetry in general and Tintern Abbey in particular, and in the next parts we will have a close analysis of the poem. So let us begin our analysis of Wordsworth's poetry. William Wordsworth is one of the foremost English Romantic poets. Romanticism in English literature spanned from 1789, that is the outbreak of the French Revolution, or 1798 with the publication of lyrical ballads to 1832. This poem, Tintern Abbey, is one of the star poems of lyrical ballads, which was published in 1798. Lyrical ballads, written in collaboration with St. Coleridge, is often considered to be the text which launched Romanticism in English literature. Wordsworth wrote a preface to lyrical ballads in 1800, which is considered by many to be the poetic manifesto of Romanticism. In the preface, Wordsworth proposed to deal with materials from quote-unquote common life in, I quote, a selection of language really used by men, unquote. So we can see that Wordsworth is making a radical departure from the earlier neoclassical poetry, both in its use of language and the kind of subject matter with which he writes his poems. Wordsworth declared that good poetry is, I quote, the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, unquote. He also qualified his definition by describing his poetry as emotions recollected in tranquility. Although nature plays a very important role in romantic poetry, it is not presented for its own sake, but as a stimulus to engage in thinking. Wordsworth asserted in what he called prospectus to his major poems that it is the mind of man which is, I quote, the main region of my song. So what we will see in romantic poetry in general and Wordsworth poetry in particular, that nature plays a very important role, but nature is presented for a purpose, and in Wordsworth's poetry the purpose is to explore the vista of human mind. So this is what roughly is the features of Wordsworth's poetry. And in the next slide we will discuss, or we will introduce the poem in particular. Introduction to the poem Tintern Abbey. The title Tintern Abbey is actually an abbreviated form of the main title, which is, I quote, lines composed a few miles above Tintern Abbey on revisiting the banks of the Wye during a tour July 13, 1798, unquote. So what is important about the title of this poem is the use of the word revisiting, which suggests that the poet or the speaker had already visited the place. Although we do not know how much time has passed between his first visit and the last one, as we will read the text of the poem, we will explore the time which has passed between these two visits, and what are the changes that that we will see in Wordsworth's attitude towards nature. This poem can be read as a monologue, imaginatively spoken by a single speaker to himself and occasionally addressing others. Once the spirit of nature, occasionally the speaker's sister Dorothy. The language of the poem is striking for its simplicity and forthrightness. The young poet is in no way concerned with ostentation. As has already been noted that Wordsworth was quite revolutionary in using language in his poems, and we have already noted Wordsworth's preference for using the language of common men in his poetry. The next point is about the physical setting or the description of the nature in Wordsworth's poetry, and this is important for your exam as well. Although the physical setting of the banks of the river Wye plays a very important role, the main interest of the poem lies in the evolution of Wordsworth's thought for nature. So, as we have already pointed out about the title of this poem, that the word revisiting is very important for this poem, and between his first visit and the last one, we will see a radical transformation in Wordsworth's thought for nature. And how does Wordsworth's thought for nature change with the passage of time? This is very important for this poem. So let us begin discussing the poem line by line. 5 years have passed, 5 summers, with the length of 5 long winters, and again I hear these waters rolling from their mountain springs with soft inland murmur. So, as the original title of this poem suggested, that this poem is about a revisit to the place called Tintern Abbey, which is situated on the bank of the river Wye. And although in the title it was not clear how much time has been passed between his first and last visit, the very first line of the poem makes it clear that the number of years which have been passed is 5. As the poet says, 5 years have passed, 5 summers, with the length of 5 long winters. Please note the second line and the use of the word 5 long winters. Wordsworth is not describing summers as long, but he is describing winter as long. Why? Because as you all know, that winters in England is very harsh. That is why he is using the adjective long in describing the winters. And again I hear these waters rolling from their mountain springs with a soft inland murmur. As you can see in the right side of the slide, I have jotted down some word meanings as well as some notes about the poem. And what I find very interesting about this poem and very important as well is the repeated use of the word again, which suggests that the poet's mind has changed a lot during his first and last visit. And it is after 5 years that the poet is again seeing the waters which are flowing down from the sounding cataract, and the atmosphere of the place is very very important and has been described by the poet in detail. As the poet writes, once again do I behold these steep and lofty cliffs that on a wild secluded scene impress thoughts of more deep seclusion and connect the landscape with the quiet of the sky. So the poet is again seeing those cliffs which are very lofty, and at the same time the atmosphere of the place is creating in his mind a sense of seclusion. Seclusion means very private or sheltered state, and this the use of the words like seclusion, solitary are very very important in understanding Wordsworth's poetry. As you know, one of the famous poems by William Wordsworth is The Solitary Reaper. So today we will finish our discussion here, and in the next class we will discuss the poem again line by line. Thank you for attending the class.